Welcome back to the Sounds of the Baskerville. I'm James Flaherty with the star of the show, Chris Baskerville. How are you, Chris?
Good afternoon, James. Good to be back.
Filmed not in Bali this time, but
The day after Melbourne Cup.
Yeah, that's right, in Sydney. Anyway, how we are here and whose fault it is will remain a mystery. But great to have you in a different place to talk about some different things. So I'm a bit of a science fiction fan. There was a film called Jupiter Ascending, which I think maybe 3 people watched. I was one of them. And it was in a world where you had everything you possibly could want, but the only currency that really mattered was time. So if the way to extend your life was to give you more time. So one of the things we've not really talked about is if I'm in business and in trouble and I want some time to kind of fix it, what are the legitimate ways as opposed to doing the typical Australian way of ignoring it? But like, what are the official? How do I buy time?
Yeah, we often do say to directors, if we can actually buy you time and we can do it a number of different mechanisms depending on the circumstance. The most obvious one is putting an administrator in. If it was a company, right, you put an administrator in play. The administrator gets 20 business days to sort something out. But within that 20 business days, if we go to the court and say, you know, Your Honour, we need more time to complete these investigations, and we can show proper reasons, the court will even extend that 20 business days and give us insert whatever amount of time that we need. So we can work with the courts on that, or even the creditor body. Like we can get up to about 45 business days using our certain powers. But generally, you got to work with the court in there. And then let's just say hypothetically, the creditors then say, okay, well, we want a deed of company arrangement, and certain things have to be done in certain times. Well, we can build in mechanisms, custom mechanisms that allow us to exercise some discretion to give even more time. So, you know, time is actually something that we can
so give. You are the time doctor. Yeah. You are the man.
Dr. Strange.
You can make things larger. And so we're trying to think of the different ways that, like, if I'm a small business person, a lot of that sounded quite expensive. So talk me, there are things like safe harbour that I could do if I wanted to keep in trade, isn't there? So safe harbour is definitely...
safe harbour is a defence for the directors in that we think we can turn this company around, or at least get a better result for creditors than what if we liquidated right now. So in other words, if you just buy time, we can do that. But you're still subject to the same mechanisms of if someone hasn't been paid, they can enforce actions and all that sort of stuff.
So in that situation, you know, you could still be subject to a creditor's statutory demand because you just safe harbour's just...
It doesn't protect you, and because you don't announce it.
You know, it's a secret thing. Yeah. And it stays in the background, but it does give an amount of protection for the director while they're trying to turn the old ship around and trying to get things fixed. They're obviously still going to pay their employee entitlements and super and all that sort of stuff to be even eligible for the safe harbour.
Which also sort of flows into, say, small business restructuring as an example. Yeah. So we're talking about time here, right? Yeah. So the maximum amount of time you get under small business restructuring under the plan is 3 years. So in theory, if you knew you could actually pay all of your creditors back 100 cents in the dollar and you've looked after your employees, you could buy basically a 3-year payment term or a 3-year payment arrangement under that, if that was important.
Could you? I mean, there's been some SBR style agreements with the tax man where they're getting close to 100 cents in the dollar, but it's a longer period. It's almost like a repayment plan, but it's got no interest in it. But I mean, if you wanted to get really fancy, you could even have can you pay a higher dividend than what was owed as part of, because if I'm making my creditors wait 3 years, I don't know, could you make it 101 cents an hour? I don't know, because effectively that's what we're doing, is that you're buying time, but there is a time value of money, which is the interest that person's foregoing, I suppose.
Yeah, because in theory, if you agree to this quantum sum, which is just black letter sum, over a particular period of time, it's only that sum coming in.
That's all you're going to get.
That's it.
But then again, the difference of case in safe harbour or SBR is you're better off taking this deal than blowing this up. Because if you blow it up, you'll definitely get less than what the plan.
Yeah, and I think that's always the tension point when you're pitching to the credit body, particularly the ATO, because they're becoming more and more sophisticated, asking more and more questions, asking for more and more evidence. So it's not just, here's our view, here's the evidence that supports it. We are always asked to, can you give us a hypothetical of what the worst case scenario is in the event the whole business blows up and we're in liquidation or bankruptcy or whatever. We have to show that using our, expertise and experience and...
Yeah, okay. So that's sort of, there's some really interesting little avenues for relatively small businesses to take advantage of those two things if they've got a situation and you're still trading. What if it's sort of getting a bit tough, or you owe more than $1 million and you have to go into voluntary administration? You've got the 20, that's where we sort of led this in, isn't it? I've got 20 days, I can go to court and I can get it extended.
So the idea behind a voluntary administrator, the idea is you're either got to increase the chance of that enterprise remaining in place, or you got to bring it all to an end quickly. So the ideal voluntary administration is a business is still trading, employees are still employed, we've still got enterprise moving forward, and we just need time. We need time to work out, well, what is the ultimate solution? Because sometimes 20 business days, we can do it, but that can be a super tight turnaround. But also, the larger the organisation, the more time typically an administrator needs. So, if you take Steelworks in South Australia, we kind of need a little bit more than 20 business days to solve this $1 billion problem.
I'm sure they're well remunerated for their troubles, but a voluntary administrator taking on a big, complex operating business like that, they are still personally on the hook, or there's an amount of, that's a big undertaking for a person to take on.
Well, imagine going home and saying to your spouse, hey, we're $1 million in the hole or $1 billion in the hole. Don't worry, everything should be right. There's some mechanisms in place. Obviously, you could come in with an indemnity from someone. So let's just say a major financial institution needs this asset to remain, right? This asset must continue on. Well, then maybe you, the financier, back the administrator with an indemnity, right? The other one is, and we've seen it with some of the bigger insolvency houses, they actually go and get court orders that removes personal liability of the administrator, particularly with some of these massive turnarounds. I think they might have done it on, don't quote me on this, but it could have been the Virgin Airlines recently. They got orders that said administrators not to be personally liable. Because we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar asset, it's critical transport infrastructure. They're doing almost a public service in trying to keep this airline up and running.
So we're talking in situations there where the business is trading on. But if there's such a muddle and puzzle, and there's assets here and there and everything, can you just sit there, hang on, hold up, I'm just going to have to sit time and figure this out? Is there something like that?
They're affectionately called a holding DOCA, which is a deed of company arrangement, but it puts the company in a holding pattern. And I think it's been challenged in court, and the court said, no, that's a legitimate purpose to do a holding DOCA. Typically, you put a company into a holding DOCA when there is a longer term strategy that we're going to come up with or that needs to be explored, but we just can't either get the information, the answers now, but it's coming, or it's waiting on a contingency to happen. And I remember in COVID, I was talking to an organisation that was cash poor, asset rich. So, and they were stressing that we weren't going to get through this. And I was pitching, why don't we put the thing into a holding DOCA while we work out, well, what can we do with the land, or maybe access the equity in it, because that's not going to come overnight. That's probably going to be a 6-month journey. But let's at least buy you the time and just put that organisation into a holding pattern. And the second example is one that we're currently dealing with, is effectively a car dealership in regional Queensland didn't quite know its numbers, didn't quite know that all the debts that it owed. And the accountants had been working 15 straight months to reconcile years and years and years of financial information so they can lodge everything to then work out this is the debt pool now. So we put that into a holding pattern or a holding DOCA just to buy time until we worked worked out what the solution was.
And typically a company that's in a holding DOCA does or is not operating, or could there be still operating entities within the larger group?
Yeah, well, a deed of company arrangement transfers the power and operation of the company back to the director. So the administrator is in control during the voluntary administration period, but once the deed kicks in, you surrender the control back to the director. So the company is actually in the director's control.
But if
Subject
you're
to
still kind of
our supervision and whatever conditions we hold the director to, which is written in the deed.
So and that is so I suppose what we've sort of came into this is how do you buy time? So there are sort of formal and informal mechanisms. I mean, obviously you can buy time by trying to negotiate with your
payment arrangements directly,
that sort of stuff. So it's just when you are literally the time lord, because you can find ways to get extra time without Doctor Who can get the business an extra time. Do you think that's a good outcome for business? It's a good outcome for business, and for creditors, it's a good outcome, isn't it?
Yeah, and understand, we won't just simply buy time for the sake of time.
No.
Like, you have to convince us that there is a really good reason why we should be pushing this forward to the creditor body, because always the creditor body will look at us and go, well, what do you think? And sometimes we have to put it in the report and stick it in there and say, this is our position. So, so I mean, one, you got to sell us on your dream first before I then take that information and give it to the creditor body.
And there could be a situation too where you may be asked in court too to...
Yeah, why'd you make this recommendation? I just thought it
was a good idea.
Yeah, it seemed like a good idea at the time. I'd just come out of Melbourne Cup races and in a way...
and here in a strange city and a strange day. But so I think that gives us a sense, though, that that's yet another one of the secret powers we've talked about that the liquidator has. So not only can you solve all the problems of the world, but you can also give us extra time. Hey, thanks, Chris. That's been fascinating.
Thanks, Jay.
Time Lord.